Hello, I'm Alex Mansfield, the host of Manny Talks Shooting, and welcome to another episode. This is the shooting podcast where I talk to individuals all across the shooting industry. We'll talk competition, self-defense, concealed carry. If you like this content, check out our YouTube channel, Manny Talks Shooting. And without further ado, let's get to this episode. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another installment of Manny Talks Shooting, the shooting podcast on the internet because of the internet, and I enjoy doing this, so you like listening to it. But without further ado, let's talk about the title sponsor of the podcast, Go Fast, Don't Suck. They make fantastic banners. They make awesome dry fire targets for your basement that your significant other will approve of because they don't hurt the paint or whatever they want to stick them on. So go check those out. GoFastDon'tSuck.net. In the order notes, tell them Manny sent you. Move on with your day. Without further ado, we'll get to the real meat and potatoes, the guest of why we're here. We are sitting down with Mr. Ben Hardt. Ben, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm good, Manny. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. It's been a blast. If anyone doesn't know, I had his teammate Cameron on a while ago, and then I talked to Ben, and then I forgot to send an email to Ben. So now we're here later.
Yeah, and honestly, part of it was my fault. Like your email sat there, looked at the schedule, life happens, and here we are. It's been a couple months, but you know, what's a couple months?
Right, exactly. No harm, no foul. We're sitting down today now, so it's going to be an awesome conversation. And hopefully you listeners understand and learn some things too along the way. But Ben, as every guest get asked, who are you and how did you get into shooting?
Yeah, my name is Ben Hart. I just had a birthday like 2 weeks ago. I'm 49 years old, if you can believe that. I don't believe it. I got into shooting. I grew up with guns. My literally one of my earliest memories was going with my dad to pick up a hunting rifle from a gunsmith's basement. Right, your typical basement guy, a custom 30-06 deer rifle. I must have been like 4 or 5, but I remember that it's one of those things that gets imprinted on your brain, right? And so I think guns have always been there, but not pistols. My grandpa Joe, he bought a 22 revolver probably when I was 14 or 15, and we kind of kicked around with that a little bit, um, and I had a 30-30 that I used for deer hunting when I think I got that for my 14th birthday, so I used that when I was a kid with my dad. But pistols and what I consider shooting now, there was this guy back in Carson City. I grew up in Carson City, Nevada. His name was Dan Turner, and it's funny because I ran into him on Instagram all these years later. But my buddy Dave and I, um, Dan was a good friend of Dave's, and he said, "Hey, you guys should come check this out. I'm going out to the Mexican Dam. I'm going to do a little bit of shooting." And we went out with Dan just some random afternoon, and he had a couple of 1911s, and he set up a couple of targets against the berm, and he probably did a bill drill or a Mozambique or whatever. But I remember him, turn draw six, reload six, and it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. Like, and he told us, he's like, "Oh, each one of these guns is like $2,500, $3,000." I could not believe that a person could spend $3,000 on a pistol, right? And it was, we spent a little bit of time and we played with his guns a couple times, but I was probably 18 at that point, and I didn't pick up a pistol really until I was 38. I had a customer who owned a gun shop, Sean, and I did a little bit of work for him. I'm a computer guy. I'm a geek. It seems like there's a bunch of geeks in the gun world,
Mm-hmm.
like higher than normal percentage of IT guys, of geeks in the gun world. Anyway, Sean had a gun shop, and I did a little bit of work for him, and he said, "Hey, if you want to pick out a gun as part of your payment, like, pick whatever you want." And I picked out a Springfield 1911, just, a regular old government issue 1911 with the little beaver tail and the terrible iron sights and like a $600 pistol. But that 1911 was about the coolest thing I saw in the store, regardless of price. And he said, "Great, take that, but you have to promise me to go get some training." And so that was kind of the beginning of it. So that was 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago. And that's really when my shooting journey began. Like I shot all through my you know my young life. I went deer hunting with my dad. I had shotguns and rifles and a couple pistols here and there, and was our family was always about that. But really shooting didn't happen until the last 10, 12 years.
Gotcha. Well, that's really cool. It's a long story, but it's kind of cool to see. You grew up. It's not like you grew up without guns, because it seems like a lot of shooters nowadays, they didn't grow up with firearms in the household.
Yeah.
They just got into it later in life, and it's cool to see that you grew up with rifles and hunt property. I'm gonna have a brain fart. It seems like today, but it's gonna be okay. But it's always nice to have those things in growing up in the household. You learn about firearm safety at a young age, and that's cool too. And
Yeah,
I
my
think.
grandpa, the guy that bought the 22 revolver, he also
Hmm.
taught us how to drive, and he
Hmm.
also taught us how to smoke. Like it was an important part of my life, right? I mean, he
Right.
literally took us out, and he was a smoker, and he
Hmm.
gave us a shot at it, and probably that's why I never smoked, because we were 10, and
Right.
talk about it, that's just nasty poison at that point. Like why would it anyway? Yeah, but yeah, was there my whole life. Guns have been part of it.
Right now, did he teach you to drive stick shift though?
He did. In fact, his van was not only a stick shift, it was a three on the tree. Like
Oh, dang.
like extra difficulty. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Now the question is, have you owned only automatic cars, or have you owned any manuals in your time?
I've owned manuals all the way up until recently. I love a manual. In fact, I was looking at a car the other day because I want to get back into a manual. Definitely a manual kind of a guy.
Oh, fair enough. And I think when it comes to the IT guys, in shooting, they just have disposable income because they just make so much money, and they don't. Typically, most of them don't have children.
And that's a good point. And we can jump right in because I was listening to Brian Hunter's HD Gold, his podcast with Brandon Brennicky earlier today,
Mm-hmm.
and Brian, I think just offhandedly said, he was talking about Brennan's. He was in college, he didn't really have much income, but he found a way to make USPSA work. I think that's one of the challenges that we face is it's a bunch of old fat dudes with some dispensable income who can afford stupid expensive guns and 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 rounds of ammo a year. And it's a different, you can't really justify that, or it's harder to justify if you're 25 and you're in your first real job and you're trying to make a housework and you're trying to probably start a family, and you're like it's harder to do when you're young, and so I think that's one of the big reasons why our sport is trending towards older, and I don't know how to solve that problem.
And I do see that too. And it seems like, at least locally to me, there's finally getting the late 20s, early 30s crowd is finally kind of picking up.
Yep.
But yeah, they're not shooting super expensive guns, but they're still taking it seriously with what they can put in, which is really nice. But yeah, I don't know necessarily. I agree with you. I don't necessarily know the answer to get younger people into the sport, because
And to
it's
stay in the
it's
sport, to
yeah.
stay in the sport. There's some awesome guys locally at our club who are early 20s, mid 20s, who are just amazing shooters. Uh, and I hope they stay. But honestly, that hasn't been the case. How do we keep how do we keep longevity in the sport with younger shooters, older shooters? Because we all have a different role.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Oh yes, we all do, and that's the hard part. Or even like getting them to stick around is like, I think the analytics is every 3 years we have a rotation of people coming in and out of the sport. It seems
yeah,
like.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, Ben, I do have a question, I guess, for this is, when you decided to find after that Springfield, what was your like first competition gun?
I don't think I've ever shot a competition with that gun, although I still have it. It's in the closet in one of my safes. um, my first competition, in fact, I didn't want to do competition. I did a bunch of like defensive training. There was a group back in Sacramento where I started shooting one-on-one firearms, and I took every class that they had, did all the defensive stuff, and they asked me if I wanted to do competition. at the time I was playing a lot of basketball. I was playing kind of an adult league baseball thing. I would golf once in a while. Like I didn't have time, right? I didn't want another sport. I didn't want another drain on my time and my money. Um, but then I took a Keith Garcia class, and Keith Garcia at the time, I don't know if this was before, after, during, but he was like huge three gunner, right? This was Three Gun Nation, like holding a $50,000 check, and he came, he was fairly local to us. I think he was down Bay Area, a couple hours from me, and he came and he did a class, a three gun class, and my buddies convinced me to come take that class, which was competition oriented, and literally that class convinced me to get into competition shooting. So, and that was three gun, right? It had nothing to do with necessarily with USPSA or IDPA. And I sold my I sold my race car. I put the golf clubs in the closet. I hung up the cleats. I took the air out of the basketball. And I was all in from, well, I wouldn't say all in, but my hobbies shifted, and I really got into shooting. And so I had an M&P core, right? The optics version of the M&P. And this, I don't think they had released the 2.0. So this was an early 1.0. And I put a Trigicon RMR on it
Hmm.
before CO was a thing. But I think three gun recognized. Anyway, so I shot an M&P Pro core in my first competition matches, and the first one was an IDPA match, and I did IDPA exclusively, probably because I didn't realize that USPSA was a thing back then. But so my first one was an IDPA classifier match back in 2015, so 8 years ago.
Now, is this the classifier that's like 90 rounds, or is
Yeah,
this
yeah,
the?
it was the old long classifier with a bunch of strings and practically a match in and of itself. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Now, so as a high level IDPA shooter, do you think that? Well, first of all, is that classifier still around and used, or is it gone by the side?
You can use it. The rules are still there. I don't know. I don't know that anybody ever. That's not true. Some clubs, you know how a USPSA club will set up an all classifier match and run, five or six, or six or more classifier stages, so you can just come in and get your initial classification. IDPA clubs will do the same thing, and they'll set up the same classifier stage on every bay, right? However many bays it is. And so they still use it, but yeah, everybody uses the 5x5, which is basically a 5 minute quick drill to get your classification these days.
Hmm. Now, do you think that they should more clubs or more matches should use the 90 round classifier as a true test of skill, or is the 5x5 efficient enough?
Probably there was some discussion about that in the past. I don't care.
Hmm.
Like, I think that it's played out that the 5x5 has shown that it's just as effective at classifying a shooter as the old long stage, long 90 round version. Um, yeah, I guess I stopped worrying about that uh, years ago. But yeah,
Hmm.
whatever. I mean, do what your shooters want. If you're a club and you've got shooters that want to shoot that longer one, like that's what this is about. Like, make your client happy. But
Hmm.
I don't think that either one of us is particularly more effective in classification.
Gotcha. Now, so you said you were shooting IDPA with an M&P core, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
How long were you shooting IDPA before you ever found a USPSA match?
You know, um, I don't know how I could probably go back and look at my practice course stuff. It wasn't that long. It was probably 6 months. The club that I shot, the range that I shot at back in Sacramento, Sac Valley, had at the time they had one or two USPSA matches a month and one IDPA match a month, and now there's two or three USPSA and the IDPA, and so I think it was probably about 6 months. And USPSA, the first USPSA match is probably what made me recognize that M&P, right? The cool thing about an M&P is you get the magwell and you get the apex trigger and you do a little slide work, and then all of a sudden you're basically an open shooter, right? And so
Hmm.
you get introduced to USPSA and it doesn't fit. easily, and you can't shoot limited minor and be anywhere close to competitive. And so I think at that point I shifted to single stack. I
Mm-hmm.
bought I bought a Springfield MCO and started shooting single stack, and that was probably 2016. And so I shot that 1911 in IDPA and USPSA because it was an identical gun.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, back then, right, the rules in the USPSA were hips. There was, they hadn't changed it to where you could run it forward to your hip bones yet. So it was the same kit and one gun and one bullet, and it worked great. So probably that next year, 2016, I started shooting single stack and the equivalent in IDPA.
Mm-hmm. Now, what I'm assuming was it so? Ooh, were you shooting major then?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so you're shooting the CDP then in IDPA.
yep. CDP, IDPA, and single stack USPSA.
Okay. Now, at what point did you leave California then and come to the big old country of Texas?
Yeah, seriously. Uh, I was in I moved to California in 1999 and had a business there. Worked for a huge multinational company that at the time was the single largest employer in the world. Rhymes with Shmee,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked for them for a few years, and then I actually started my own business, and I had an IT consulting company in California, in Sacramento, until so that was in 2003, and I sold that business in 2021 and moved to Texas in November of 21. So almost 2 years ago.
Oh, wow, wow. So that's kind of fast. Well, not really. You moved it. And how are you enjoying the shooting scene? I guess in what the DFW area, correct?
Yeah, so I'm just north of Dallas. I'm about literally 1 hour north of downtown Dallas in a little town called Salina. Um, and we have a great range here, Mission 160, and they do, strangely enough, they do a lot of IDPA, and they do a USPSA match or two a month. And then we've got XMG, and then there's ETTS down south, and then there's there's matches at least every weekend, and most weeks there's a Monday or whatever night match, either IDPA or US. I've never shot an indoor match, but they run an indoor match practically weekly, and then there's at least one match every weekend. So all the shooting I need, and I'm a member at 160, and so like I'll go out there. The goal is, especially when I'm spinning up for a match, the goal is to shoot 2 to 3 live fire days a week. So I'll go out in the morning, shoot for an hour, hour and a half, shower, go into work, whatever. But there's a great shooting scene here, and dude, some really good shooters. Glock just announced this last week. A couple of new shooters on their team, Morgan Leonhardt, which nobody's surprised about.
Mm-hmm.
A phenomenal shooter for that's been shooting a Glock forever. And then T No, who's a local shooter here. Her and her, I don't know if they're husband or if they're just boyfriend girlfriend. I'm sorry, T. I'm sorry, Ken. Her and her significant other, Ken Yang, are here, and we've got Dazi Zhang, who's a top level CO shooter, and then a couple of younger guys that are on fire. It's a great shooting scene here, and people who are serious about shooting. And then of course my best training buddy Fabio, who kind of followed me from California, and then my teammate Cameron, who you talked to a couple of weeks ago. He's down in Austin, but he's thinking about where he's going to go next. So he comes up, and it's like a 2 hour drive. So he comes up here, and in fact, we trained yesterday at the range. So awesome scene. Some really good shooters, and an opportunity to shoot whenever I want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And like I've talked to a few people about that. That scene exploded,
Yeah.
and there's all it doesn't. So if you win the match, you should feel good because there's always heat in the
Dude,
Dallas area.
it's legitimate heat here. There's some great shooters. Whatever division you want to shoot, there's some great shooters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you're very fortunate because like up here where I live, there is not a lot of top end heat, which is unfortunate. I mean, we'll have the few masters, like Carry Optics masters, but no one's at that super top level, so it's always kind of a wash on who you stack up against. But that's very nice to be able to go to a local match and be like, all right, I can't mess up today, or I gave it all away.
Yep. Yeah, it's sometimes it's like that. It's like a little bit. It can be disheartening because if I'll tell you when I left Sacramento, especially on the IDPA side, like I was winning all the matches, right? I was winning the locals. I was winning our major IDPA match there. I would win, and on the IDPA side, like I was third last year at IDPA nationals. Like I'm a pretty high level IDPA shooter,
Mm-hmm.
not as high level on the USPSA side, but I was super competitive and trying to win the USPSA matches. And in single stack, I was, there was a couple of guys there that would give me trouble, but most of the time I could count on winning a single stack match. Out here, like it's been awesome to have guys better than me, pushing me, making me better, and yeah, like I can go home and beat myself up after any given match because I didn't win. Like there's some really great shooters pushing me out here.
Mm-hmm. And that's all. And as they say, competition breeds greatness. I think it really truly is because it's going to push you to go home, dry fire, go live fire what you need to work on, and then come back next week and then duke it out again.
Yep.
So, you talked a little bit earlier. Well, you just mentioned him, Fabio. Your buddy in the world that you dragged from California. I think he probably appreciates that you pulled him out of California. It seems like.
Dude, I mean, we can knock California, and I know you said we don't talk politics, but man, everything that you saw in the news and everything that a Texan says about California, it was worse. It
Mm-hmm.
was seriously worse than what you've seen on the news. It's unbelievable what California has become. When we moved there 20 some years ago, it still is a great state. There's some amazing things in California, but brother, the business environment, especially for small businesses like I owned, and some of the other challenges as a strong Second Amendment supporter, definitely a challenge. And living in this free country of Texas has been great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is true, and it's excellent. So, for most people don't. Well, most people should know you are a team member of Team Beretta. Team
Yep.
Beretta USA.
Yep.
How did I'm curious without going past any NDAs you might have? How did that relationship start?
You know, um, I what so let's see, how long ago was it? So it must have been like 20 it must have been 2018 or 2019. And and Beretta had put out had sent a letter to IDPA saying, "Hey, we're looking to sponsor an IDPA shooter. Anybody who's interested should submit their interest." And IDPA kind of published that, and I got an email, and a bunch of people got an email, and so I wrote my little letter and submitted it to HQ. But then what happened was COVID, right? Nobody was shooting majors, everything got shut down, matches got canceled, nothing happened. Like I didn't shoot very much. That's when I picked up reloading. So nothing really happened to that. And then a couple years later, I was shooting single stack or low cap nationals USPSA. That would have been 2020 probably
Mm-hmm.
in Talladega. Yeah, 2020 or 2021. That must have been 2021. And I was in Talladega, and Beretta was a title sponsor, and they had their trailer there, and they had a bunch of people there, and I thought, what the hell? And I went up and talked to Linda, Linda's one of the Beretta folks. She was under the trailer, awning, and she was kind of there. And I said, "Hey, um, you know, I don't remember how I said it, but she's like, oh, you need to talk to Nicola. Come back tomorrow or come back later or whatever." And so I hung out a little bit, talked to a couple of their people, played with the guns a little bit, talked to a couple of their product managers, and then went and shot my match. Right, I was shooting single stacked. It was low cap nats, but JJ was at the match shooting production, and the other team shooter at the time, Jessica Hook, was there shooting limited minor, L10 minor, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
with her 92X. And so I came back later and talked to the people. But I'll tell you what really did it, and I think I've told this story. But have you ever been to Talladega? Have you shot there?
No, not yet.
So in Anniston, the nearest town where all of the hotels are, there's a Mellow Mushroom pizza joint, right?
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind, this was 20, no, it must have been 2020. This was 2020. COVID was just coming off. Like we weren't wearing masks. We're still wearing them on the airplane in the airport, but in Alabama, nobody was wearing masks, but nobody was working. And we were at the pizza joint at Mellow Mushroom after the first night, and it was packed. And Mellow Mushroom had like 3 people working because nobody was working, and there's 200 shooters in there trying to get a beer and a pizza. And I was at the end of the bar with like one seat next to me, just having probably a beer and some pizza knots or something. And some guy comes up to me and he says, "Hey, do you mind if we squeeze in?" And he squeezed in, and we ordered a couple drinks and started shooting the bull. And turns out this guy's name was Brian Buzzy, and he's on the shotgun team for Beretta. And so we had a couple of beers, not knowing who each other was, and we're friendly and joking and laughing, and then the rest of the Beretta team piled in. JJ and Jessica and Linda and Nicola, was the team manager at the time, and so everybody came in on the Beretta team, and so I ended up, having some interest earlier that day. But really, what sealed it was I just had some beers and a couple of old fashions with Brian at the bar, and just made a friend. Turns out he was the right guy to be connected to. So, they were looking, and I put myself out there and I made myself available. But I swear it was just being a good dude with a bourbon at the bar.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so they invited me back to the trailer the next day to come kind of look at the gun and test it out. And they sent me home and said, "Look, test it out, shoot it, see if you like it. If you don't think you can win with it, then we'll move on. But if you do, we'd love to talk." So that was what it was. That was May of 21. So it was 21. Yeah. So it's been a little more than 2 years. They sent me home with the gun, and kind of the rest is history. Like first of all, if you ever get an opportunity to work with a major manufacturer like that, like who would turn that down? And then it turns out that the platform, I didn't, and British might be pissed about this. I'm not really a decocker fan. Like, I don't like the old 92Gs. I don't like the decocker. Like, it smacks my thumb because I'm a thumbs up kind of a guy. Like, I'm a 19. Like, I didn't really enjoy shooting the old 92s, but the 92X performance with the frame mounted safety, and it fit. It was a 2011. Like, what a great gun. So it's been awesome. It's been awesome to shoot for him.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of rare and odd and few far between to say that you started a sponsorship deal with some bourbons at a at a Mellow Mushroom pizza
Dude,
joint.
I bet you it was less rare than you think that a sponsorship started with a bourbon. But yeah, I definitely did not go into that match thinking that was going to happen. Um, and it's one of those things that has just been awesome. And I'm proud and thankful and still a little bit amazed that I'm a Team Bretta shooter.
Mm-hmm. And it's got to be cool, and you're able to input on guns and how you can change the line, put your feedback in to put in new changes for guns down the line, because what they came out with that aluminum frame. No, God,
Yeah, it's
what
aluminum
the
frame. It's aluminum alloy, the XI,
yes,
yeah,
the new
the,
one,
the
yeah, the
92.
newer one,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Because Cameron was telling me about that when we talked, and that just seemed really cool.
yeah. It's awesome. Like, I mean, there's not that many people that get to do this. Like, we all love shooting, but man, I'm so lucky to be part of a major manufacturer and get to have input and get to represent a brand like Bretta, for
Hmm.
sure.
Well, and it's quite interesting because Beretta is more than just pistols. The thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on shotguns alone.
Oh yeah, dude. Like pistols are the redheaded stepchildren. Like
Oh yeah.
like they forget that they sell pistols. I'm convinced. Like shotgun is where a Beretta is really dominant. I'm sure you've seen like, if you've got 3 Olympic medals, two and a half of them are Beretta for sure. Like they dominate in the shotgun space. Um, and then they throw a couple bucks to the pistol team. But yeah, it's all about shotguns, and they make some incredible shotguns.
Hmm. Right. Have you been to one of those the fancy stores? I know there's one in New York with, the
Dude, there's
gal.
one in Dallas. I can't believe I'm admitting this. They have a Beretta experience here in Dallas that I haven't been to. Jessica and Jessica were here a couple weeks ago because they did an event, and I was
Mhm.
traveling and I couldn't go down and be part of it. But they have one in Dallas. I haven't even been down there. Yeah,
Sounds like someone needs to make a field trip one of these days.
yeah, I definitely. And I'm like, have to. I go down there practically weekly for some client work. I just need to go down. That's all there is to it. I'm going down next week. That's it.
There you go. Boom. But so as we talked a little bit earlier, in California, you did a bunch of firearms tactical training.
Yep.
Has that since starting competition shooting, have you, other than Fabio, have you taken any other tactical classes?
You know, um, phew, I have Mike Seeklander. He's probably the second guy that I ever trained with, besides
Hmm.
the one-on-one guys that were local that I trained with a bunch. But the second, big name training guy was Mike's, and I might have even trained with Mike before I trained with Keith. And Mike is kind of known for his defensive stuff. And I've trained with him a number of times over the years, both defensive and competition. Um, he's a great instructor. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, he literally wrote a book about being a firearms instructor. That guy is a really, really good teacher. And so I've enjoyed, and I give a lot of credit to Mike for my core style. Like he's a big dude, right? He's built like a tank, and he's got the ability to control just about any platform he runs. But I took a lot of my basics, my fundamentals. I give Mike credit for,
Hmm. Well, and I even forget that he teaches defensive style minded classes
and he
because
hasn't been teaching as much the last couple of years. But yeah, like that's where he makes his living is in the defensive stuff.
hmm
Yeah,
I always think of him as doing the Wilson combat thing, the
yeah.
Mike Seeklander, what is it, the American Warriors
American
Society?
Warrior Society. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but that's pretty
Good dude.
cool.
Like Mike is a great guy. Super serious as a competitor, but what a good guy. Like gives out a ton of content. Long term trainer, incredible history as law enforcement and FAMS and all the other stuff that he's done. Like Mike has serious chops.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, from time to time, seeing on other people's socials or maybe even your own, you still avidly take competition classes as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't get guys that don't train.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter what level class it is. There's going to be a perspective that you haven't seen that can help your shooting. Like, I trained with Charlie Perez recently. I trained with Travis Tomasi recently. I'll train with Fabio, my good buddy and my training partner, who I literally will spend hours on the range with, working out problems. But working with him as a trainer is a different situation. I've trained with Robbie Latham, who is arguably the best shooter ever, right?
Hmm.
Action shooter ever. Like if I get a chance to train with dudes, I'll take it as often as I can. Mason Lane is coming out here next spring. I'm excited to train with Mason. And that's one thing that those guys do. Mason and all those guys, Mason and Ben and the rest of that, Joel and the rest of that crew is like they all pick up stuff off Hwansik. They all pick up stuff off each other. Like they're never done training, right? Top level guys, they're never done in the lab. And that means training with each other, training with other great trainers. Yeah, man, I love it. I wish I had the time and the budget to train monthly,
Hmm.
but for sure, it's a great way to skill up. It's a cheat code. Steve Anderson, like I've worked with Steve, technically, fundamentally, and definitely on the mental stuff, probably 4 or 5 times, and it's always if you take the same class, 3 years in a row, it's different every year because you're a different shooter. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
always good. Like I don't know. I seriously don't understand people that aren't interested in training, whether it's defensive, whether it's competition, whether it's if you want to do CQB. I promise there's something you could learn in a CQB class. Like get out there and handle your gun and be a better shooter. What's the
Mhm.
problem?
Right. And I agree. Going and taking training classes is pretty, in my opinion, needed. And
Yeah,
I just got done like this past weekend. I hosted a Tom Castro class here at my local range.
yeah.
Oh, and I will say that was a long, long weekend of fun and hard
Dude, that
training.
guy has more energy. I was squatted with him for Area 4.
Hmm.
That guy has more energy and more go than anybody I've ever been around.
Hmm.
Like go, go, go. That guy is ready to roll whenever. Yeah,
Oh,
Tom is high energy. He's awesome.
oh yeah, and he's even more hyped like for his students. Like we'll be running the practice stage, the class stage, and someone crushes it. He's the first one hooting and hollering.
Yeah.
It shows how much of it all of his energy, but as an instructor, really truly cares about his students because not everyone's gonna be jumping up freaking off. They're sitting down in a chair and they jumping up for joy when they kill it, and it's like,
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, you know, there's something to be learned from just about any instructor. I've been in some less than stellar classes, but even those ones, there's a nugget.
mm-hmm,
Like train with whoever you get the opportunity to work with. Have an open mind and do some cool stuff. Right?
right. Now, you mentioned you would, if you had the budget and time to train every month. Do you feel that there is definitely when people just go out and take classes to take classes and not actually learn anything and not be able to actually apply those lessons from the teachings they're getting?
You mean tourists?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't feel that way at all. Yeah, I totally feel like that. But I think even if they're just straight tourists and they're not willing to go back and put in the work, like it supports the industry. They're gonna get something out of it, and I'm not even against that. Like I don't
Hmm.
understand it. I don't understand not going and putting the work afterwards and kind of applying it. Um, but um, but I guess I get it, maybe.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's that's what keeps the sport alive is instructor tourism, isn't it?
Hmm. Right. And it seems it's much more like on the tactical side of the
Oh
house. Like people want to take a Scott Jedlinski class yet then not learn anything, or just they're just there to be there to check it off their list.
yeah, yeah. And or that yeah, it's hard.
Hmm.
And it's sometimes it's frustrating like that world, the pure defensive or the pure whatever tactical game, and they don't consider competition, and in fact a lot of times they poo-poo competition, and I don't understand that. Like, but whatever, get
Hmm.
your patch, get your coin, and don't apply it, don't test it. It just doesn't compute for me. Like go out and apply, go out and test. Obviously we can't go get in a gunfight, right?
Hmm.
So next best thing is let's get in a competition and test our skills.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Like this is like other than the fact that this is really addicting and fun to go shoot competitions almost every weekend,
Yeah,
it's super good training like for 200 rounds, an 6 stage, 7 stage local match,
yep,
really is going to show you your deficiencies with
yeah,
a, proficiency of a firearm.
yep.
Now you said coin and patch. I have a question now. Have you taken an Ernest Langdon class and had a chance at the fast coin?
I have not. I signed up for a Langdon class last January, and then I got the Rona and was not able to attend.
Mm,
So I do not have any experience with Ernest.
hmm.
So
Yeah, that's got to be interesting because he's a Beretta. Wow.
he's
Now,
the Beretta guy. Like if you
yeah,
talk about Beretta, you talk about competition, you talk about training. Like Langdon is Beretta for
right.
sure.
Now, before you were part of Team Bretta, have you handled or felt an LTT?
I have, yeah. A couple of friends had them. A guy named Jeremy Story, who's a phenomenal shooter. He's a cop, and so he doesn't do the socials, but that dude can shoot. He shot Berettas for a while for Will. He's a Wilson a combat team shooter now. And before Wilson, he was shooting an LTT. And so I'd shot his, I'd shot a couple of others. I'd shot them, but like I said, the decocker thing wasn't so much my flavor, right? But yeah, I'd shot them.
Hmm. Yeah, I kind of agree with you on the decocker thing. I'm much more of a like a frame mounted safety kind of person,
Yep.
especially now. I mean, like I went from Glocks to custom 2011s.
Oh shoot, yeah,
It's kind of a weird thing, but
yeah,
you kind of figure that out. The thumbs up thing is definitely difficult with the slide mounted decocker.
yep.
But I
I
do want
carry one now. I
yeah.
work around it because I have a 92X compact that's my carry gun, which is a G decocker only, and
Hmm.
it's a great little pistol that I shoot well. Um, but you have to remember to tuck that thumb under.
Right. So this is actually a good kind of segue question. Then Ben really wants to know, when are you going to switch to a PX4?
Yeah, Ben would ask that. That dude, he's so funny. Like he is fully on the PX4 bandwagon. The PX4, for anybody that doesn't know, it's a cool little gun. It's a weird looking gun, but it has a rotating barrel. It's not a Browning lockup barrel, and it's definitely not the 92 with the locking block. It has a rotating barrel, and so when it cycles, the barrel rotates as it feeds, and it's super soft shooting, especially for being a light plastic, compact gun typically. And I've shot them in the past, but um, it is a gun that I will probably have in my safe at some point. But I'm just weird. Like when I get onto a platform, I've got 100 guns in my safes. I don't even mess with them. Like my old Wilsons are out there, my all my ARs. I've got some fun lever guns. Like I feel guilty for not practicing my competition craft if I pick any of those other ones up. So I'm not gonna lie, I get like straight line focused on the platform that I'm shooting. So
Hmm.
PX4 is a cool gun, but Ben, brother, like pull out the 92 and come and compete.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
He shared something yesterday or the day before about getting 25. Right?
25 plus one. Yeah,
I was like in that little. Well, I mean, he's probably using the full size PX4
I
mags.
think it's still 140 millimeter though. I think it
Hmm.
still fits.
That's pretty legit though, in
Yep,
that itty bitty gun that he likes.
yep.
But he's all ever since I've known him, he's always loved Beretta products and.
Yeah, yeah. Him and Les and Brandon, like those
Mhm.
guys they let me and Cameron into their Beretta gang. Let's put it that way. Like those guys
Right.
are OG. Yeah.
Right. Now, now this is honestly funny. So a couple people asked, "How does it feel being so damn tall?"
Yeah, I don't even notice. I don't even notice. It's funny because um I will come up to somebody short and I'll meet somebody that's not as tall as me, and then I'm reminded, or I'll see a picture and then I'm reminded that I'm freaking tall. But I love it. Like, given the choice, 5'10" or 6'6", obviously I'm going to choose 6'6". The only
Hmm.
problem is, Southwest. Like, otherwise everything's cool. Like, you know
Hmm.
what I mean? I love being tall. I really do.
Right. Now being saying that, you love being tall. What about ports?
What about what?
Ports. Like now, do you feel like that
Yeah,
they just like they put those itty bitty small ports in there, or do you
yeah,
think that they should just transition to these big gaping ports?
yeah.
So.
I think for the frequency of low ports, um, it's a trade off that you have to make. If Nils can do it, and Nils is about the same height as me, if Nils can do it, I can do it, right?
Hmm.
Nils can do it, I can do it. Yeah. Nils is the shooting style and the shooting model that I try to emulate. Big dude. He's younger than I am, obviously, and he's a much better shooter than I am. But if I can emulate what he does, and if I can try to make my movement as efficient as his, I'm all about that. So that's the rule. If Nils can do it, then I can do it.
Right. Now, do you model yourself after Nils purely because of height?
That's a big part of it,
Hmm.
but also, he's a little bit longer and leaner, like I used to be, and he's just so dominant and so efficient and so consistent. That's my favorite thing about Nils is like he is maybe the most consistent shooter over the last 5 years, you can count on him to be, first or second, whatever he shoots, first or second. That's just where he is. He's
Hmm.
so consistent. He doesn't blow up. He doesn't have train wrecks. He's just always there.
Hmm. Well, and it's really cool too is that he'll actually post his match videos,
Yeah.
so you can actually see and compare yourself to him.
Yeah.
Unlike some of the other top shooters who don't really post it.
I'm gonna call out JJ. JJ posts like one stage a year. Like
Hmm.
like I love JJ. He's a great teammate and a phenomenal shooter. I wish he would post more so that I could learn more just from his, because we all steal that stuff. Like we watch Nils, I watch Nils, or I watch Christian, or I watch JJ when he posts stuff, or I watch whoever the top shooters are. Robbie Latham. I would go back and watch old Rob videos because he's a big tall guy like me too. Now he's heavier than I am at this point, but and older with bad knees, but you watch Rob shoot, you watch Rob move. That guy was so efficient and so good at being at the right place at the right time and just pulling the trigger. Yeah, that's the fun stuff is breaking down other people's shooting, whoever it is. Christian is probably 5'9" or 5'10", much smaller, more compact, more powerful shooter than me. But man, that guy is really good at being efficient and being on target on time. Or Max or whoever. Like also I'll subscribe to all those guys. Mike's stuff, Max's stuff, Jay Beal, like a little spider monkey of a dude. But man, anywhere I can pick up a nugget, I'm gonna try to apply that to my training and my shooting.
Hmm. Right. And that's honestly what everyone should be trying to do too is emulate them. Well, not necessarily copy, but learn from them and apply it to their own fundamentals and or strategies. Because necessarily, are you going to be able to mirror something that Spider Monkey J Beal does? Because
Right.
you
I've
only get.
tried. Dude, I've tried. You've probably seen some of my videos where he's pulling some crazy stuff out in 1.3, and I'm trying to keep up speed wise with Jay, and it's good for you.
Hmm.
But yeah, and not even necessarily what they do, but why. Like, why are they
Hmm.
approaching it like that? Why are they doing this? What is it getting them? And that's been a fun part about the shooting journey is every time you get a little bit better, you can go back and look at fundamentals in a different way. I swear I look at fundamentals more than anything, right?
Hmm.
And you go back and you look at them again. You go back and look at grip, go back and look at trigger, go back and look at stance and what you can get away with. And the better I get as a shooter, the less I worry about these huge complex skill sets and I focus on fundamentals and then you stack them up, right? You stack everything on top of each other, and it's supposed to happen naturally. So,
Hmm. Yeah. And and as they say, fundamentals really are king in the sport. That's where you're going to live and die.
yeah,
Is you're not going to lose the match by something stupid. It's going to be something you do stupidly about your fundamentals.
yeah, fundamentals for sure.
What you give up to you're sacrificing there, or especially your competitor too. Like it's everything really.
Yep.
Now, Brandon wanted to know how many rounds on average do you shoot per live fire session?
Um, I do I do 3 to 500 depending on the day, depending on what I'm doing. Um, but the goal is about 1,000 a week, right? With
Hmm.
a couple of weeks or a month, a month, 6 weeks of off season. So my goal is between 40 and 50,000 a year, which means 2 sessions a week of about 500. That's generally the goal. You hit or miss. Um, but if I'm working a real certain skill, like maybe a hard exit off a steel to a wall or a port or something, and it's a 3 round, like that's just 3 rounds, one on steel, two on your next paper target. You could even break it down to 2 rounds. Like you're not going to burn a lot of rounds in a 2 round drill, but if I'm doing shooting on the move where I've got 4 targets with barrels in between, and I'm shooting that line, and I'm doing 8 rounds a piece, and I'm doing that for an hour, you're going to burn a couple hundred pretty easily. So it just depends on what I'm working on, but generally it's 3 to 500.
Hmm. Which is, I think, a very respectable number.
You
Now,
get over that, and you
mhm,
start to get a little bit burnt, unless you can be out there all day and take a break, right?
right. Well, and it probably helps when you have Fabio there with you. You're able to, you're loading mags, he's shooting, or you're watching, or vice versa. So it's not like you can make it an all day thing without feeling like you have to burn a lot more rounds than
Oh,
that.
for sure. And I'm so lucky. Back in Sacramento, I had some great training partners, and now I get to work with Fabio, and we can break stuff down, and we can watch each other, and we can push each other, and we can try. Like, dude, yesterday we were just trying, half a step different, or step this way instead of this way, or spot this or spot this, and you break stuff down into just really, really basic bricks. Talk about fundamentals. Like, it was super basic, simple stuff, and we spent an hour on it. And Cameron was there yesterday too. Like, it's awesome to have a training partner that we can just go down and just geek out. It it really pushes your shooting.
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. And if that's what some people can get from this too, is like find a training partner.
Yeah,
I'm not that lucky, so I don't have a training partner. So it's definitely nice to have a second set of eyes on you while you're shooting it and have them ask questions. Like, even like I said, I mentioned earlier, I took that class this weekend, and I buddied up with the shooter who was about my same level, and I'm like, well, so why'd you have this delta on this target here? You know,
yeah.
it was nice because they had to articulate back to me, and I got something out of it, and then they kind of figured out like, oh, someone's actually asking me questions of whys instead of to put it back into perspective.
Yeah, it gets hard to do it by yourself. I get a lot of value when I'm just out there by myself. But
Hmm.
but man, having a separate set of eyes is for sure a benefit. And I've had that my whole shooting career, and I'm thankful for it for sure.
Hmm. Oh, so this is a good question. Since you hung out with him yesterday, Brandon wants to know, who do you like better, Cameron or Fabio?
Oh shit, that's not even fair. Like, Fabio's my buddy. Like, I've known Fabio for a while, and we've been solid friends for a few years. But Cameron is just, I mean, everybody likes Cameron. He's such a
Hmm.
good dude. But yeah, like good friends. Fabio and I live 20 minutes apart, and we could have dinner with each other. And, like, wives are cool. Fabio's my buddy.
Hmm. Right. So, you just mentioned that Fabio and you are close to living together, and you live close to Mission 160.
Yep.
How was it nice having so many like major matches this year, like an hour from home?
Dude, if I could plan that every year, holy cow! Like, I'm all for having Area 4 at Mission 160 for the next 10 years in a row. Like, half hour from home, no travel, no hotels. Like, that was awesome. That was awesome. And then we had a couple of other. Last year we had North Texas Open, which is our sectional, and they do a couple of IDPA majors here. Yeah, it's the owners there, and that range, it's got some smaller bays, and we can't go past 25 yards, which
Hmm.
sometimes sucks, but they do a good job of making use of what they have. And yeah, yeah, I love being able to shoot there and shoot close.
Because wasn't it like there was an IDPA match directly before Area 4 this year?
Yeah, the weekend before. Yep.
That was got to be probably pretty strenuous on the guys running that match, because they had to tear down the IDPA match and then get it back ready for Area 4.
Yeah, it is. But like I said, there's some good volunteers around here, which, again, like, you can't run the sport without volunteers. There's the great clubs around here, and Michael, Bethon, who runs in North Texas Open in Area 4 this year, and then his match directors, Lee Neal, and those guys. Like, they're just great volunteers, and they've been doing it a while. And yeah, there's a bunch of drama in the sport, but we really try to keep it out of our matches. And I'll tell you, when we left California, we looked at Phoenix area, Prescott area, because that's friggin' Mesa, right? For shooting. We looked at Nashville, kind of Tennessee area. And then we looked at Dallas area, because legitimately I couldn't imagine moving somewhere where I couldn't shoot as often as I wanted to. It
Hmm.
was a big factor in where we moved.
Right. And it honestly is like, you can pretty much shoot. You can in Texas shoot all year round,
Oh yeah,
which is nice. Which
it gets a little chilly. Like there's some cold friggin' days, and it's 108 out there today. Like it's hot as balls, but we can shoot.
right. It's not like us here up in the upper north where there's snow on the ground and no
No,
one
no,
goes
yeah,
outside.
snow on the ground. That's crazy. I don't know why anybody would live up there.
I mean, you do get shut down when there's any snow on the ground, it seems like, because Texas doesn't have the infrastructure for snow.
There's no infrastructure. But dude, we had a week last year where there was 3 inches of ice on the ground. Does that count?
Hmm.
It was rough. It was rough.
Yeah. I just couldn't fathom, like, but I don't live in the South, right? I live
Yeah,
up here. I've lived up here all my life, and it's like, yeah, we just know what snow is.
yeah.
But so so Ben, do you have what are your current goals right now in shooting?
Oh, I have a couple of things I'm working towards. We have IDPA Worlds in October in Talladega, and I believe that I have the ability to win that match in carry optic.
Hmm.
Um, JJ and Sal, who are also Team Beretta shooters, are shooting in SSP, which is production equivalent. And Cameron is shooting carry optic with me. Um, so I think between the four of us, like we can have 4 podium spots at that match, and I have the ability to win carry optic for IDPA Worlds.
Hmm.
So that's that's a pretty short term goal that I'm working towards. On the USPSA side, like I have not performed anywhere near my ability on the USPSA side of the house. I shot CO Nats and I finished 80% of Christian, which was, about 10% lower than I really wanted to. Um, so I'm working hard on the USPSA side as well. I'm going to shoot IPSC Nationals in November in Florida. I'm going to shoot IPSC Nationals in April in Arizona. And then I'm going to shoot CO Nationals wherever it is and whatever month it is in 24, because I would like to at least have the ability to have points to shoot IPSC in South Africa in 25. Like
Hmm.
I don't know that I'll be in the top, 3 or 4 or whatever that makes the team, but dang it, I want to try to get those points. And I don't know how the points work as far as senior. I'll be 50 next year, and I will be eligible to shoot as a senior for IPSC worlds, or, world shoot in 25 in South Africa. So that's kind of a goal of mine, is to be in South Africa shooting IPSC. So I want to improve my placements in USPSA, and I have the ability to be there. I'm not going to beat Nils. I'm not going to beat JJ, this year. Gosh, I'd love to get much closer to competing with those guys and being more consistent. Like I had a couple of top 10 stage finishes at CO Nats this year, but then I had 100 and something on a couple. Like my consistency has to get better, right? I have to,
Hmm.
that's one of the things I talked about with Nils. So my goals are very high finish at IDPA Worlds, and put myself in position to be at least a consideration to go to South Africa.
Hmm. Which
And
is a
that,
very go
it
ahead.
goes back to what you were talking about earlier. Like the turnover in the sport is, every 3 years or so, there's a bunch of new faces. Now the top guys are still going to be there, but I want to be there. Like I want to be close to the top.
Hmm. Yeah, I think we all and if someone says they don't want to be towards the top, I don't know why they do this sport because we're all really competitive Type A personalities as it
Totally,
is.
totally. They're lying if they say, "Oh, I'm just having fun." What you're
Hmm.
saying is, I don't want to embarrass myself and say the goal out loud. And frankly, I've been there. Like people might laugh at me saying this, but I think that I can be a top 10 shooter in USPSA. I really do.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's and see that, but you've got the mentality and the mental game to be able to do that and have that belief in yourself too, right? A lot of people, when we talk about the mental game, they have no idea what you're talking about. If it's just visualizations and stuff, but it's truly about believing in yourself and having that confidence. I think to perform and not get stirred up by the mistakes.
Yeah. But how awesome would that be? I'll be 50 next year, to be a top 10 overall shooter at 50 plus and one of the best senior shooters in USPSA. I think that's a very achievable goal for me, and that's what I'm working towards.
Hmm. And I think those are absolutely fine goals. And at least you're not a distinguished senior yet, like all
right?
your friends like to pick on you
But
for.
dude, I hope that I'm still shooting when I'm a distinguished shooter. Like I know some really good distinguished senior shooters. Like I hope that I'm that good. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. Or you're still competitive.
Yeah.
That's the trick. Now, IDPA has distinguished master. Do you think we need something like that in USPSA?
Oh, totally. Yeah, yeah. We need, GM is not played, but and it's, I hate the term paper GM, but I think that winning nationals or worlds or that level of match should have some distinguishing nomenclature. I think somebody asked, it might have been you asked about it on Instagram, and I think there should be like Dragon Master or something extra cool. Whatever, like Miyagi Master, something. Dude, there's got to be something better for winning nationals.
Hmm.
Something better.
Right. Just especially then you can really know, you're fighting against, it's not just, oh, it's a GM shooting today. No, it's a distinguished master or whatever we want to call them. I mean, distinguished master is too close to IDPA in my
But
opinion.
on the other hand, like we all know those guys, right? We can probably name the last 10 years worth of those shooters, back to Vogel and Stager and those guys that, and even further back with Todd Jarrett and all those guys. Like we know who the winners are. Do they need another title? I don't know. Maybe not. Like we know who they are.
Right. We do, but it definitely shows like there is a different level at that top
Maybe a belt
3%.
buckle, something.
Like a big size Texas belt buckle,
Yeah,
right?
there you go. Yep,
Everything's bigger in Texas.
yep.
Well, okay, now that I said Texas, how many times do you drive past a Bucky's going to a match?
So there's a Bucky's at the intersection of 121 and 75, which is like 2 miles from Fabio's house and like 3 miles from the exit that we take. So, if that counts, like every time, every time.
Okay, so do you stop and get stuff?
Dude, Bucky's is you got to be in the mood for Bucky's. Like there's
Hmm.
16 different flavors of beef jerky. There's all the barbecue. There's I was thinking about getting a onesie or a bikini there. Like you got to be in the mood for Bucky's. I'm more of there's this little dumpy gas station right at the turn for Mission 160, and they deep fry those terrible bean burritos that you got when you were in college, right? Those
Hmm.
$2 bean burritos from the freezer. They deep fry those. Oh man, I will eat two of those every time I go to the range. Like I got to stop myself. That's what I'm about. Is I'm about those terrible deep fried bean burritos
At a questionable gas
at a
station.
very questionable gas station. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I kind of want. Now I'm reminiscing about those bean
See, you
burritos.
see, and we microwaved them, and they were cold in the center, and they were burning your shit on the outside. Like when they deep fry those things, it's the best burrito
Mm,
ever.
bean burritos. That's it. And I and it's so interesting because people don't like. I haven't been to a Bucky's yet. They need to build one closer to me. But like, there's every time you talk to somebody, it's like, well, like my buddy Brian Levy down in Austin. He's every time I ask him, "Did you go to Bucky's this time?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "Okay."
Hmm.
He's like, "Oh, I stopped this time." I think when he goes down to one of those matches, he stops at Bucky's, but it's
I'll tell
always
you
a
what.
hoot.
I'll tell you what the actual cult is in Texas.
Hmm.
It's HEB, the grocery store. Have you heard of HEB?
No, I'm not.
The only place that they build HEBs is Texas, and they have like one in Mexico. Like it is the grocery store cult of Texas. It is, and it's like if you crossed a Bucky's with a Whole Foods and then added a bunch of Texas. Like it's not actually healthy Whole Foods, but it's like the cult status of Whole Foods plus the cult status of Bucky's. That's HEB.
Ooh.
That's
Mm.
HEB.
That
Like
sounds.
they opened one a few miles down the road from me earlier this year, and they had to bring out police for traffic enforcement. Like waving. People go crazy for the HEB. I don't get it.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
don't think most of us will. I mean,
Never.
now I've got to go experience it, or
Yep.
something at that level.
Yep.
So so Ben, we're getting near the end of our time today on the show, but I do have a few more questions I want to ask before we end this thing. So what is something that current Ben would like to tell past Ben about shooting?
Boy. Um, I remember when I took a class with Mike Seeklander and Phil Strader, and we pulled Mike with my buddy Jeff, and we pulled Mike aside and we asked him exactly that. We said, Mike, what would you tell your younger self? Like, what's the secret to like how can I get better tomorrow? Like, what's the super secret sauce? And honestly, it's just repetition. It's fundamentals and repetition. Like like, quit trying to do the fancy shit. Do the fundamentals a lot. Dry fire sooner. Like, I didn't pick up dry fire, legitimately dry fire until like 2019. Like, dry fire is the way.
Hmm. Oh, I agree. I enjoy dry firing. A lot of people say it's boring, but I think it's as boring as you ever you get out of it.
Yeah, dude, it's my meditation. Dry fire is awesome.
Yeah, I will say I do like to jam out to music sometimes while I'm dry firing, or
Oh, I
sometimes
can't
it
do it.
it has to be absolutely quiet sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, usually it gets me in the, like surprisingly sometimes like I'll dry fire with music and it gets me in the mood, and then I just stop the music at some point.
Yep.
It's kind of like working out. You got to hype yourself up to go work out. It seems like.
Oh man. And I'm a morning workout guy. Like, I'll be sitting on the couch having my coffee, and it's 6:15, and I'm like, ah, all right, get your ass off the couch and go swing those kettlebells. Like, that's hard. It's hard. I could use a little bit of hype music for sure.
Right. Like, and speaking of that, like I'm a 4 o'clock in the morning workout guy
Oh, you're
purely
in.
because, well, it's very hard to get up out of bed and like actually get up and leave and go to the gym. It's like must go. But
No, I'm a garage gym kind of a guy. I've got kettlebells in the garage. I've got rubber floors in the garage. I'm not going to a gym.
mhm.
Man, I would never leave the house. Like, if I had to go somewhere, yeah, that would be, that's rough.
Right. Now, even when do you still find time to work out when it's this hot in Texas?
Oh yeah, I'm out there. I'm out there at 6:30 in the morning, and
Hmm.
it's 90 in the garage. But that just means you get sweating sooner. Yeah, I was out there this morning.
Right. So it's like your own dry sauna.
Exactly, exactly.
But yeah, yeah. And it's nice to be able to mix like the dry fire in and still being out and go work out. You feel better about yourself. Especially when you can do both in a day.
I dry fire first. Like,
Hmm.
if I'm going to skip one of them, it's going to be the workout. Like, the dry fire is more important.
Right.
I'll spend 20 or 25 minutes doing dry fire, and then I'll work out for another 30 minutes, and then I shower and off to work.
Hmm. Right. And that's the money right there. And I'm surprised. I'm surprised with you being an IT kind of guy in technology. I'm surprised you actually have to go somewhere to work.
I go to the so I'm less of a tech. I'm less of a doer these days.
Hmm.
I'm more, frankly, I'm more sales, and I'm more convincing people what they need to do and showing them how they need to do it, and then I hand off the work. So a lot of times it's meetings, it's in person, or it's mentoring my guys, working with
Hmm.
my team. But I get a couple days at home. But I like being around people. Like, I like the people part of it.
Hmm. Right. And that's a lot of it too, is like going to communicate with actual people
Yeah,
instead of emails and IMs on whatever platform you guys have to use. And
dude. If
it's,
my customer is local, I want to go have a meeting in person and not on Teams. You know what I
hmm
mean?
yeah, the nowadays with the technology, it just makes it so impersonable,
Yeah.
and it doesn't help, like especially if there's an issue between your client or and the business. It's like,
Well, and you talked about being tall earlier. I'm not going to
mhm,
lie, being tall and being the biggest dude in the room, it helps me to win business. Like, being a tall, knowledgeable presence dominant presence in a room is valuable for me in a business meeting. Like, I'm going to take advantage of that.
Right, as you should, right? Like
Yeah.
use it to your advantage.
Yeah.
Right. So Ben, so other than being on Team Beretta, who are your other sponsors or partners that you deal with?
I've had some great sponsors over the years. Brian Conley at Hunter's HD Gold. Like, that guy is just, I don't even know how he makes any money. I swear he gives glasses to everybody who asks for him. But Brian's awesome and has supported me over the years. The guys at Tony Systems, and not a lot of people know Tony Systems, TONI, but they make all the accessories. They make the mag extensions. They make the mag wells. They make the plates to mount the optics. They make grips. They make a ton of accessories, not just for Beretta, but for basically all of the major platforms. And I have to say that I beat the crap out of their parts, their base plates, their extensions. Like, I don't put pillows on the floor when I'm dry firing, and I drop mags onto my garage floor. Man, they just make durable, awesome stuff. So I love having Tony Systems gear on my guns. Lock grips. Blake and the guys at Lock reached out, and they've made some custom stuff for us for Beretta. I love my lock grips. Like, I'll have to be honest. Like, when I first saw Lock, I was like, oh, that's a gimmick. Everybody's doing the Lock thing. But then they sent me the wraparounds and the palm swells, and they're like, here, what do you need custom? Like, can we build them for the new XI? Those guys are awesome. They're like Brian as far as supporting the sport and just being there for the sport. So Lock is some awesome guys.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Mark Seven is a title sponsor, and they give me support for the press. They help. They're at most of the majors these days. Like, again, Lyman bought the Mark 7 platform and has really put effort into supporting shooting sports, and definitely have supported me. And they've got some great folks on the team. And Mark 7, I can't imagine I can't imagine pulling a handle. Like, an automated press is about the best thing ever. And then the guys at Precision Holster, he's just a local dude up in Placerville, California, up in the foothills above Sacramento. But he saw a market locally in Sacramento and built some great holsters, and he helps me out and had some custom holsters for me for my 92s when there wasn't really good product out there. So John and Scott and the guys at Precision have been awesome to me. And then Fabio with my own Defender, like, he's not really a sponsor except for he pushes me and we practice together all the time. And I owe a lot of my shooting to Fabio for sure, as far as what we do. And then Steve Anderson, he's a sponsor. Like, if I ever needed something from Steve, or if I want to take a class from Steve, he's just there. He's like, brother, you're welcome anytime. Um, that guy changed the way that I approach shooting, and I appreciate his support. Steve is doing good things for the sport, and people, like, again, I don't understand why people won't train, and I don't understand why people won't give Steve's mental model a chance. Like, if you've got a different mental model, awesome. Compare it to what Steve's doing and what Steve's talking about that works, and take what you want from it. But people pretend like it's, patting yourself on the back and giving yourself a participation trophy, but that just means they haven't given it a shot. So if you haven't listened to Steve and if you haven't given it a shot, you owe it to yourself to do that. Like, to be a better shooter, you owe it to yourself to listen to Steve and actually listen to what he's saying, and not just think that it's writing in your diary, dear diary, I shot 50 rounds today. Like legitimately give Steve a shot.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the guys that support me. And man, it's awesome to not have to worry about very much other than getting to a match and shooting. It really is.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's awesome. Fun fit little tidbit. Lock grips is only about an hour and a half away from my house.
Oh,
So
no kidding.
yep, they're actually they're really close to one of the ranges that I'll sometimes go shoot at. So it's like literally the same town. Like, you wouldn't have known it until you looked them up on the internet and be like, oh, that's the same town.
Yeah. Yeah, those guys are great. And I'm sure, and I don't know what their facility looks like, but I'm sure it's just a tiny little rented out warehouse where they've got a CNC machine and they're carving out G10. Like, you'd never know it, but awesome guys. And Henning Wahlgren, he's not a sponsor, but same kind of guy, like just a geek who loves his shooting stuff, has made some. Who would have thought that a holster hanger could be so dramatically different? But in the last 2 years, his holster hanger has changed the market. Like, I
Hmm.
love that stuff. I love it.
Right, exactly. Like I even use a Henning T1000 on a Alpha X holster from Double
Yeah,
Alpha.
yeah, he's doing a great job. I love Henning's stuff.
Hmm. Well, Ben, if people actually wanted to talk to you on the internet, talk about Berettas, talk about being tall or shooting or mental game, where can they reach out to you?
Obviously, my main platform is Instagram, and I'm Ben underscore shoots underscore. I'm totally blocked. You're not going to find it unless you search it specifically. Ben underscore shoots underscore. I'm on Facebook with the same thing. I do have a YouTube channel that once in a while I put some Beretta stuff on there. But the easiest way to get me is on Instagram. Like, I get guys that will ask me about, how I tune my guns, accessories, holsters. Like, dude, feel free to hit me up on anything about the Beretta stuff. I love talking about guns almost as much as I love talking about myself. So whenever, I'm good.
Hmm. Well, that's awesome. Ben, brother, thank you for coming on. I've had a blast. We've gotten to chit chat, get to know each other a little bit better, and have a good time and talk about shooting. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, man. I hope we get to shoot a match. Like, we've never met in person, and that's the best thing about shooting is I've got some great friends, and then you meet a bunch of people on Instagram, or you meet a bunch of people because of a podcast, or whoever you listen to, and then you run into each other at a match. I hope we run into each other at a match this year. That'd be awesome.
Oh, absolutely. I'd like that, and it. I love this shooting sport. I mean, this is kind of why I do it. I
Yeah,
love this sport.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Manny, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. It's flattering, and thank you.
No problem. Anytime, Ben. And we'll probably have to do this again at some point. I'm guarantee it.
Yeah, awesome.
But but thank you, and to the listeners, get out and do the things, and I will see you on the next one.